A simple woman inherits her grandfather's old cabin, but what she finds inside changes everything. Rachel Bennett had spent the last 5 years being questioned by her family about her life choices. An elementary school teacher at a public school in Asheville, in rural North Carolina, she earned just over 2 minimum wages and lived in a rented one-bedroom apartment. While her sister Jennifer built a brilliant career as an executive in New York, Rachel was seen as the black sheep who wasted her potential by choosing an underpaid profession. The call that changed everything came on a rainy Tuesday in March. On the other end of the line, attorney David explained that she had inherited the old cabin of her grandfather Walter in the rural area of Boone. Rachel could hardly believe it. The family always talked about that property, abandoned for 5 years since her grandfather's departure, but no one had ever shown interest in visiting it. "You need to sign some documents and take possession of the property," the attorney explained in a formal voice. "Mr. Walter left specific instructions that only you could inherit the cabin." Rachel hung up the phone with a racing heart. Why had her grandfather left the property specifically to her? They weren't particularly close, although she had always held affection for the quiet man whom the family considered eccentric and irresponsible with money. The following weekend, she took her small white Honda Civic and followed the dirt road that led to the property. The cabin was about 15 kilometers from the center of Boone, in a mountainous region surrounded by preserved mountain forest. When she finally spotted the structure, her heart tightened. The wood and stone cabin was covered in ivy and had its windows boarded up with nailed planks. Rachel got out of the car and slowly walked to the main door. Her hands trembled as she tried to turn the doorknob, but the door was locked. She walked around the property looking for an entrance, but all the windows were blocked by wooden planks nailed from the outside. The family always said that Grandfather Walter had abandoned the place in his later years, moving to a simple house in town. "How am I going to get in here?" she murmured to herself, observing the structure that seemed to have been purposely sealed. After searching for almost an hour, she found a small side window at the back of the cabin where one of the planks was loose. With some effort, she managed to remove it and slip inside the property. The interior was dark and smelled of mold, but when her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she stopped in the middle of the main room, completely shocked. The cabin wasn't empty as everyone believed. On the walls there were makeshift shelves full of folders organized and labeled by dates. In the center of the room, an old wooden table held an ancient typewriter with a sheet still inserted. Next to it, stacks of yellowed envelopes were separated into different cardboard boxes. Rachel approached the table with growing curiosity. The sheet in the typewriter contained just 2 lines. "To my dear granddaughter Rachel, if you are reading this, it means your time has come to know the truth." With trembling hands, she pulled up a chair and sat before the typewriter. Her eyes scanned the room, trying to understand what she was seeing. She walked to one of the shelves and randomly picked a folder labeled January 2020. When she opened it, she found dozens of handwritten and typed letters. The first letter she read left her breathless. "Dear Mr. Walter, I have no words to thank you for what you did for my family. The money that arrived in the envelope last week allowed us to buy my son's medicine. The doctor said that without the treatment, he could have serious complications. You saved my boy's life. May God always bless you. With eternal gratitude, Dorothy Williams." Rachel read the letter 3 times before being able to process what was in front of her. She picked up another letter from the same folder. "Mr. Walter, Mrs. Evelyn from the pharmacy gave me the envelope with money for my 3 children's school supplies. I don't know how you found out we were in need, but your help came at the right time. My husband has been unemployed for 6 months, and we couldn't even afford the basic notebooks. Please accept our gratitude. Signed, Mary Grace Thompson." The letters continued, dozens of them in the same folder. They all followed the same pattern. People from the region thanking Grandfather Walter for financial help that arrived anonymously through third parties. Rachel randomly opened other folders and found the same thing. Letters of gratitude dated over several decades. But how? She asked the silence of the cabin. The family always said that Grandpa Walter was poor and irresponsible. On the opposite wall, she discovered a painting covered by an old sheet. When she removed it, she found a painting signed W. Fletcher, a pseudonym she didn't immediately recognize. The painting depicted the mountainous landscape of the region with impressive technique. Next to the painting, there were 3 others framed and covered. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. As she explored the cabin more deeply, Rachel found a handwritten notebook in a desk drawer with handwriting she recognized as her grandfather's. The first page said, "Good Deeds Diary, started in 1985. She quickly flipped through the pages and found detailed records of donations made over decades. Each entry contained the name of the family helped, the amount sent, the date, and the reason for the assistance. The notes were meticulous and organized. March 15, 1987, the Bennett family, $200, youngest daughter's urgent surgery. September 3, 1991, widow Agnes, $150, roof repair before the rainy season. December 22, 1995, the Williams family, $300, Christmas dinner and presents for the children. The pages continued filled with similar records. Rachel mentally calculated and realized that, over the decades, her grandfather had donated the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's values. "Where did he get so much money?" she murmured, flipping through the notebook. The answer came a few pages later. Her grandfather had written a detailed explanation about his system. He sold paintings under the pseudonym W. Fletcher to art galleries in Charlotte and Miami. The money from the sale of these works was entirely used for anonymous donations. Rachel sat down heavily in the chair. Her view of her grandfather was beginning to completely transform. The man the family considered irresponsible and eccentric had in fact dedicated his entire life to helping people in need in the community. Continuing to explore the cabin, she found a small attached room that functioned as a painting studio. Easels, paints, brushes, and dozens of canvases were carefully organized. Some paintings were unfinished, others framed and ready. The artistic quality was impressive. On a high shelf, she discovered a box with correspondence exchanged with gallery owners from various cities. The letters confirmed that the works of W. Fletcher were in constant demand and sold for significant amounts. Rachel's cell phone rang, interrupting her discovery. It was her sister Jennifer calling from New York. "Rachel, I heard you went to Grandpa's cabin. Don't waste time with that ruin. Let's sell it quickly and split the money." "I've already spoken with a real estate agent, and he said the property has potential for a rural subdivision." "Jennifer, you wouldn't believe what I found here." Rachel began speaking, still processing the discoveries. "Whatever's there must be old junk. The important thing is to get rid of this quickly. I have contacts in construction companies who can make a good offer. You need to think about the future, not cling to things from the past." "But Jennifer, Grandfather Walter was an irresponsible dreamer who never managed to save money for anything. You know that. Don't let sentimentality ruin an opportunity to finally have some financial stability. An elementary school teacher can't afford to waste chances like this." The call ended abruptly when Jennifer had to attend a meeting. Rachel looked around the cabin with a mix of sadness and indignation. How could the family have been so wrong about the grandfather? She resumed exploring the folders organized on the shelves. In one of them, she found copies of receipts and bank transfer records. The grandfather had created a sophisticated system for his donations. He sent money to trusted intermediaries in Boone, mainly Mrs. Evelyn from the Central Pharmacy, who passed the amounts to needy families without revealing the donor's identity. A specific folder caught her attention. It was labeled Continuity System. Inside it, she found a typed document explaining how the system worked and a letter addressed specifically to her. "My dear granddaughter Rachel, if you're reading this letter, it means I've passed on and you've discovered my little secret. For decades, I tried to make a difference in people's lives in this community, but I always maintained anonymity because I believe true generosity doesn't seek recognition. I chose you to continue this legacy because over the years, I've observed your generous heart. I saw how you dedicated yourself to underprivileged children at school, how you spent your own money buying supplies for needy students, how you always chose to help others even when you had little for yourself. The family never understood my choices. They saw my simplicity as lack of ambition, my discretion as eccentricity. But you were always different. I remember when you were 10 years old and shared your lunch with a classmate who had nothing to eat. In that moment, I knew you had inherited what truly matters. Attached to this letter, you'll find information for a bank account I secretly maintained for years. All the money I didn't spend on donations was saved to ensure the system continues functioning even after I'm gone. The accumulated amount will allow you to continue helping our community for many years. There's just one condition. You must live in this cabin for at least 1 year to access the resources. I know it seems strange, but I want you to truly understand what it means to belong to this community before taking on such responsibility. Inside the wooden chest in the bedroom, you'll find everything you need to begin. I trust you, my dear granddaughter. Make this property a place of hope. With all my love, your grandfather, Walter. Rachel read the letter 5 times before fully absorbing its meaning. Her hands trembled as she searched for the chest mentioned in the cabin's main bedroom. When she found it, it was locked, but the key was inside a small envelope attached to her grandfather's letter. Inside the chest, there were bank documents, a savings passbook with written passwords, and a second notebook with detailed instructions on how to conduct the donations. The indicated balance left her speechless. More than $200,000 accumulated over decades of savings and painting sales. But the condition was clear. She would need to reside in the cabin for a full year to access the resources. Rachel walked around the property as the sun began to set over the mountains. The cabin needed basic repairs, electrical wiring, plumbing, general structure, but had the potential to be livable. The surrounding land was spacious and well located, with a stunning view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. She thought about her current life, the tiny rented apartment, the salary that barely covered basic expenses, the constant feeling of wasting her potential in the eyes of her family. And now, before her, was an opportunity to do something truly meaningful, to honor her grandfather's memory and help people in need. But it would also mean leaving behind the security of the city, facing her family's lack of understanding, and embracing a completely different life in an isolated rural area. When she returned home that night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, reliving every detail of what she had discovered at the cabin. For the first time in years, she felt she had found a greater purpose for her life. The next morning, she called the school and asked for a few days off to deal with family matters. She needed to go back to the cabin and explore everything more calmly before making any decision. During her second visit, Rachel found more details about the system her grandfather had created. In a small workshop attached to the main house, she discovered a rudimentary press he used to make engravings and lithographs. Stacks of finished works were carefully stored in drawers with humidity control. She also found an old landline phone still working and a list of contacts. The first name was Evelyn, Central Pharmacy. Rachel decided to call. "Central Pharmacy. Good morning," answered a woman's voice. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with Mrs. Evelyn." "That's me. How can I help you?" "My name is Rachel Bennett. I'm Mr. Walter Bennett's granddaughter. I'd like to talk to you about the system my grandfather maintained." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Rachel? The little teacher, granddaughter? My God, your grandfather talked about you so much. Can you come here to the pharmacy today? We have a lot to talk about." The pharmacy was in the center of Boone, on a narrow street lined with colonial houses. Mrs. Evelyn was a lady of about 70, with graying hair tied in a bun and reading glasses hanging around her neck. "Your grandfather was a special man," she said, leading Rachel to a small office at the back of the pharmacy. "For almost 30 years he trusted me to distribute aid to families in the area." "How exactly did it work?" asked Rachel. "Every month he sent me a list with family names and the corresponding amounts. I would separate the money into envelopes and deliver it personally to each one. He always said it came from an anonymous benefactor. Most never knew it was your grandfather." Mrs. Evelyn opened a drawer and showed notebooks with records of the deliveries made over the years. "He had sources of information all over town. He knew when someone was in trouble before the family even told anyone. It was as if he had an invisible network of solidarity." "And now?" asked Rachel. Do people still need help? Mrs. Evelyn's face grew sad. More than ever. Since your grandfather passed, many families have started struggling again. Some people still come here asking if the angel has returned. They don't know it was your grandfather, but they miss the help. Would you help me continue the work? Asked Rachel, surprising herself with the sudden decision. Mrs. Evelyn's eyes lit up. It would be an honor. Your grandfather always said you had a heart just like his. It seems he was right. In the following days, Rachel made several visits to the cabin to familiarize herself with the system left by her grandfather. She discovered that he kept detailed records about each family in the region: family composition, financial situation, specific needs, history of assistance received. The work was more complex than she had initially imagined. It wasn't just about distributing money, but truly understanding each family's needs and offering help in a dignified and respectful way. During this week of discoveries, Rachel didn't tell anyone in the family about what she had found. She knew Jennifer and her parents wouldn't understand. For them, the important thing would be to sell the property quickly and make an immediate profit. On a rainy Thursday, while organizing documents in the cabin, she received an unexpected call. "Rachel, this is Attorney David, the lawyer who handled your grandfather's will." "Hello, attorney. Is something wrong?" "Actually, I need to speak with you about some specific clauses in the will that haven't been discussed yet. Could you come by my office tomorrow?" Attorney David's office was located in a restored colonial house in the historic center of Boone. He was a man of about 50, thin and elegant, with well-groomed grey hair. "Rachel, your grandfather was very specific about certain conditions of the inheritance. Besides the cabin and the land, he left a few other things for you." The lawyer opened a sealed envelope and pulled out several documents. "First, there's a bank account in your name that can only be accessed after you prove residence on the property for 12 consecutive months. Second, there are deeds to 3 other small rural properties in the area that are also part of the inheritance." Rachel's eyes widened. "Other properties?" "Yes. Your grandfather acquired them over the years and kept them secret. They're smaller plots but well located. The total value of the inheritance is substantially higher than we initially thought." "Why did he never tell the family anything?" Attorney David smiled discreetly. "Your grandfather was a man of many secrets, but all of them seemed to have a noble purpose. He came to me 5 years ago to organize this will. He said he wanted to make sure his inheritance would be used in the right way." "Did he mention anything specific about his plans?" "Actually, yes. He left an additional letter that should only be delivered after you became aware of the inheritance conditions." The lawyer handed over a yellowed envelope with Rachel's name written in her grandfather's handwriting. "Dear Rachel, if you're reading this second letter, it means you've decided to accept the challenge of getting to know our small community better. I want you to know that the additional properties weren't acquired by chance. Each one has a specific purpose in my plan for the future. The property on Creek Road has a pond and a spring of drinking water. It can be used for family farming or sustainability projects. The property in the mountains has an incredible view and potential for rural tourism. The third one, near the municipal school, would be perfect for educational or community activities. My intention was always to create a lasting support network for our community. The monthly donations are important, but they can end. Projects that generate income and empower people are more sustainable in the long run. I trust you'll know how to use these resources wisely. Remember, true wealth lies in the difference we can make in others' lives." Your loving grandfather, Walters Rachel, left the office with her mind buzzing with possibilities and responsibilities. Her grandfather's inheritance wasn't just a personal opportunity, but an invitation to transform the life of an entire community. That night, she made a decision that would change her life forever. The next morning, Rachel called Jennifer and asked to gather the whole family for an important conversation. They met at their parents' apartment in Asheville over the weekend. "Everyone, I need to tell you about what I found in Grandfather Walter's cabin," she began, taking a deep breath. "I hope it's something worthwhile," replied Jennifer, scrolling through her phone. "I've already spoken with the realtor, and he can give us an answer about the land's value on Monday." "Jennifer, let Rachel speak," their mother, Mrs. Carroll, interrupted. Rachel detailed her discoveries: the thank you letters, the donation system, the paintings, the secret bank account. The family listened in growing silence, alternating between surprise and skepticism. "This doesn't make sense," said Jennifer when Rachel finished. "Grandfather never had money for anything. How could he have been donating significant amounts for decades?" "I saw the documents, the letters, the bank records. Everything is documented," Rachel replied. Her father, Mr. Anthony, shook his head thoughtfully. "If this is true, it means the old man deceived us for years, always borrowing money, always complaining about financial difficulties." "Maybe he didn't want you to know," Rachel suggested. "Maybe he preferred to keep things simple so he could help more people." "Or maybe you're letting yourself get carried away by sentimentality," Jennifer said coldly. "Even if grandfather made some sporadic donations, that doesn't change the fact that we now have a valuable property that can give us financial stability." "I'm going to live in the cabin," Rachel announced. The silence in the room was broken only by the sound of the television on low volume. "What?" asked Mrs. Carroll. "I'm going to resign from the school and move to the cabin. I want to continue the work that Grandfather Walter started." "Rachel, have you lost your mind?" Jennifer exploded. "Abandon your career to go play philanthropist in an isolated cabin. You're 32 years old. You need to think about your future." "That's exactly what I'm doing." The discussion that followed was intense. Jennifer argued about financial instability, social isolation, and wasted potential. Their parents expressed concern about Rachel's safety, living alone in a rural area. "What if you find out you can't maintain this donation system?" asked Mr. Anthony. "What if the money runs out? You'll have sacrificed your career for nothing." "Dad, I found over $200,000 saved by grandfather. Even if I only use the interest from that amount, I can maintain the donations for years. And there's more. He left other properties that can generate income." "What other properties?" Jennifer asked immediately. Rachel explained about the additional properties and her grandfather's plans for sustainable projects. With each new revelation, she saw Jennifer's interest grow, but for reasons different from her own. "Look, Rachel," Jennifer said in a more controlled tone, "if all these assets really exist, we need to think strategically. I work in business management. I can help you create a serious business with these properties: rural tourism, organic farming, corporate events. We can turn this into something profitable and still help some people. It's not about profit, Jennifer. Of course it is. If you want to help people, you need sustainable resources. Amateur charity never works long-term. Leave it to me. I'll draw up a business plan that will multiply the value of these properties." "I don't want to multiply value. I want to continue what grandfather started." The meeting ended without consensus. Jennifer left visibly upset. The parents remained worried, and Rachel felt more alone than ever. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The following Monday, Rachel returned to the cabin with a rented pickup truck loaded with basic furniture and supplies. She had decided to spend a few days on the property to assess the actual living conditions. The electricity was working poorly, the plumbing needed repairs, and several roof tiles were loose. But the basic structure of the cabin was solid, and the location was privileged. From the porch, she had a panoramic view of the mountains that changed color with the time of day. During her first night sleeping in the cabin, Rachel heard strange noises that made her nervous. Gusts of wind made the old wood creak, and there were sounds of animals in the surrounding mountain forest. She realized that rural life would be more challenging than she had imagined. The next morning, she received a visit from a man around 40 years old, with dark hair, good-looking, wearing simple work clothes. "Good morning. Are you Mr. Walter's granddaughter?" "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "My name is Richard. I work with renovations here in the area. Mrs. Evelyn from the Central Pharmacy told me you needed some things fixed here on the property." Richard did a complete assessment of the cabin and prepared an estimate for the essential repairs: electrical system, plumbing, roof, and general painting. The amount was within Rachel's means, considering her personal savings. "Did you know my grandfather?" she asked as Richard finished measuring the rooms. "Yes, I did. Mr. Walter helped me a lot when I was starting out. He lent me tools, referred me for some jobs, always gave good advice. He was a good man. People around here miss him. How did he help? Richard hesitated a moment before answering. You won't believe it, but when my oldest son got sick, an envelope with money appeared under my door. I never found out who sent it, but at the time your grandfather was the one who gave me strength not to give up. Now I'm understanding where that help came from. Over the next few days, Rachel received several visits from local residents. The news that Mr. Walter's granddaughter had returned spread quickly through the community. One of the most touching visits was from Mrs. Dorothy, a black woman around 60 years old who lived with her teenage grandson in a humble house a few kilometers from the cabin. Dear, your grandfather saved my grandson's life, she said with tears in her eyes. The boy had a heart problem and needed urgent surgery. Out of nowhere, the money we were missing for the treatment appeared. I never knew where it came from, but I'm sure it was your grandfather's doing. How are you doing now? Is the boy okay? Thank God he recovered. He's 15 now, studying law, wants to be an attorney, but things are tough again. My pension barely covers the basic expenses. Rachel mentally noted Mrs. Dorothy's case. It was exactly the kind of situation her grandfather's system was set up to handle. During her first week living in the cabin, she established a routine. She woke up early, organized the documents left by her grandfather, studied the cases of families in need, and planned the first donations she would make. The system created by her grandfather was impressive in its organization. He kept updated files on each family, with information on income, family composition, specific needs, and history of aid received. There was also a network of discreet informants who kept him updated on new situations of need. Rachel decided to make her first donation to Mrs. Dorothy's family. Following her grandfather's instructions, she prepared an envelope with $500 and personally took it to Mrs. Evelyn at the pharmacy. I want you to give this to Mrs. Dorothy, she said. Tell her it's from the anonymous benefactor. Are you sure you want to remain anonymous? Asked Mrs. Evelyn. People would love to know who's helping. I'm sure. My grandfather always did it this way, and I understand why. Help should be discreet to preserve the dignity of those receiving it. 2 days later, Rachel received an emotional call from Mrs. Evelyn. Rachel, you should have seen Dorothy's face when I handed her the envelope. She cried with gratitude. She said she didn't know how she was going to buy her grandson's medicine and was going to have to take out a loan. That first experience confirmed for Rachel that she was on the right path. The feeling of being able to make an immediate difference in someone's life was indescribable. However, her first weeks in the cabin also brought unexpected challenges. The loneliness was more intense than she had imagined. Accustomed to the busy routine of school and urban life, she missed constant social interaction. Moreover, her family continued to pressure her to reconsider her decision. Jennifer called almost every day with new business proposals involving the properties. Rachel, I spoke with an investor who's interested in a partnership for rural tourism. He's offering full financing to turn your properties into luxury inns. You could earn 10 times more than with these amateur donations. Jennifer, I've already said I don't want to turn this into a business. You're being stubborn and foolish. You have a golden opportunity in your hands and you want to waste it on sentimentality. Conversations with Jennifer always ended in arguments. Rachel began avoiding her calls, which only increased the family tension. One Thursday afternoon, while organizing the paintings left by her grandfather in the studio, she received a visit from an elegantly dressed man driving an imported car. Good afternoon. Are you Rachel Bennett? Yes, I am. How can I help you? My name is Charles Edward Harrison. I'm an art collector. I heard that you inherited some works by W. Fletcher. Rachel was surprised. She didn't expect anyone to know about her grandfather's paintings. How did you know about this? W. Fletcher is a well-known pseudonym in North Carolina's artistic circles. His works are highly sought after. I'm interested in acquiring whatever is available. Charles Edward entered the studio and carefully examined the paintings. His enthusiasm was visible. These works are exceptional. W. Fletcher had a unique talent for capturing the natural light of North Carolina landscapes. I can offer you $150,000 for the complete set. Rachel almost choked on the offered amount. It was almost 3 times what she had in personal savings. "I need to think about this," she replied, trying to remain calm. "Of course, but don't take too long. Quality works like these are rare. I'll leave my card in case you change your mind." After the collector left, Rachel spent hours contemplating the paintings. She knew the money from the sale would be enough to completely renovate the cabin and significantly increase the donation fund. On the other hand, selling the works seemed like a betrayal of her grandfather's artistic memory. She decided to consult Mrs. Evelyn about the dilemma. "Rachel, your grandfather always said that the paintings were a means, not an end," the pharmacist explained. "He painted to be able to help people, not to collect art. If selling these works will allow you to help more families, I think he would be happy." Mrs. Evelyn's advice made sense, but Rachel still hesitated. She decided to keep the paintings for now and focus on the monthly donations using the resources already available. During her second week in the cabin, she identified 12 families in the region who needed immediate help. Using the information left by her grandfather and conversations with Mrs. Evelyn, she prepared a list of donations for the month. Distributing the money became an emotionally intense experience. Even while maintaining anonymity, she saw the direct impact of her actions through Mrs. Evelyn's accounts. One family managed to pay for a medical consultation for their diabetic daughter. Another could buy school supplies for 3 children. An elderly man obtained funds to fix his roof before the rainy season. Each case confirmed to Rachel that she was properly honoring her grandfather's legacy. However, not everything went smoothly. In her 3rd week at the cabin, she made a mistake that left her deeply shaken. Based on incomplete information, she authorized a significant donation to a family that, she later discovered, had invented a situation of need to take advantage of the system. The discovery came through Richard, the construction worker who was doing the cabin renovations. "Rachel, do you know Gerald's family who lives near the gas station?" "No, I don't." "Why?" "Yesterday I saw him buying expensive liquor at the market, saying he had won the lottery. I thought it was strange because last week he was borrowing money from everyone saying his daughter was sick." Rachel's stomach tightened. She had donated $800 for the supposed surgery of Gerald's daughter, based on information that came through third parties. "How could I have been so naive?" she murmured to herself. Richard noticed her distress. "Don't blame yourself. There are always people who try to take advantage of others' kindness. The important thing is not to let this discourage you from helping those who really need it." The episode left her deeply discouraged. She spent 2 nights without sleeping properly, questioning whether she was really competent to continue her grandfather's work. That's when she decided to seek out Mrs. Evelyn for guidance. "Dear, do you think your grandfather never went through this?" said the pharmacist with an understanding smile. "In the early years, he was also deceived a few times. You learn from your mistakes." "How did he handle it?" "He created a more rigorous verification system. He always asked 2 different people to confirm the situation before authorizing large donations, and he also learned to get to know the community better." Mrs. Evelyn opened one of the old notebooks and showed her grandfather's notes about attempted fraud cases. "Look here," he wrote, "those who really need never ask directly. They are always humble people who try to solve things on their own until they can't anymore. Your grandfather had a special wisdom for identifying true needs." Mrs. Evelyn's words reassured Rachel, but also made her realize that she needed to get to know the community, where she decided to live much better. She began taking regular walks through the area, visiting families, talking with local merchants, attending Sunday Mass at the district church. Gradually, she built a network of knowledge about the people and their real needs. This integration with the community brought unexpected results. Rachel discovered local talents and skills that could be developed. One lady made exceptional homemade sweets that could be marketed. A young man had a natural talent for woodworking but lacked proper tools. A single mother sewed very well but couldn't find clients. That's how the idea emerged that would completely change her approach to her grandfather's legacy. Instead of just giving money, she could help people develop their own sources of income. The additional properties left by her grandfather could be used to create production and training spaces. The property with the pond could become a center for family farming. The property with the panoramic view could host a local crafts workshop. The property near the school could be turned into a vocational training center. Rachel was excited about the possibilities, but knew she would need help to implement projects of that scale. That's when she met Helen, a 68-year-old retired agronomist who lived alone on a nearby farm. Helen had spent decades working on rural development projects and had exactly the experience Rachel needed. They met one afternoon when Helen stopped by the cabin to introduce herself as a neighbor. "I heard you're Mr. Walter's granddaughter. He was an admirable man. I always wanted to get to know him better, but he was very reserved." "Are you familiar with community development projects?" Rachel asked directly. "It's my specialty. I spent 30 years working on rural training and family farming. Why do you ask?" Rachel told her about her discoveries and her plans for her grandfather's properties. Helen listened with growing interest. "This is exactly the kind of project I've always dreamed of implementing," Helen said with shining eyes. "I can help you create something sustainable and truly transformative." The partnership with Helen brought a new perspective to Rachel's plans. They spent many afternoons planning how to use the properties to create income opportunities for the community. Helen also helped her better understand the local dynamics and identify community leaders who could support the projects. "The secret is to involve the community itself in the planning," Helen explained. "People need to feel that the projects are theirs, not external impositions." Following this advice, Rachel organized the first community meeting at her grandfather's cabin. She invited representatives from various families in the area to discuss needs and possibilities. The meeting was a success. Dozens of people attended, and the conversation revealed specific demands: vocational training for young people, support for small farmers, space for marketing local products. "There are people here who make artisanal cheese better than any factory, but they have no way to sell it," said a local producer. "My daughter finished high school, but has no opportunity to learn a technical trade without leaving the area," commented one mother. "We grow organic vegetables, but there's no specific market for this type of product," added another participant. The meeting confirmed that there was real potential for local development projects. Rachel left that gathering with renewed energy and a clear sense of direction. However, her plans faced unexpected opposition. Jennifer found out about the meeting through acquaintances in the area and was furious. She called Rachel the same day. "I heard you're holding meetings on the property. What's this about community projects?" "I'm organizing initiatives for the local community using the properties Grandpa left." "Rachel, you're creating expectations you can't fulfill. These properties have real commercial value. You can't just go around promising things to everyone." "I'm not promising anything. I'm planning viable projects with qualified people." "What qualified people? A retired agronomist and some country folks?" "Rachel, you need to wake up to reality. I'm coming there this weekend to talk in person." The call ended abruptly, leaving Rachel apprehensive about the coming confrontation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following Friday, Jennifer arrived at the cabin driving her black SUV, accompanied by a man in a suit whom she introduced as an investor interested in the properties. "Rachel, this is Mr. Maurice. He has experience in rural real estate development. He came to take a look at your properties." Rachel didn't like her sister's authoritarian approach, but decided to be polite. "Good morning, Mr. Maurice, but I need to clarify that I'm not interested in real estate development." Of course, the man replied with a condescending smile. "Your sister explained to me about your social projects, but look, I can create a venture that generates income for you and still benefits the local community, jobs, infrastructure, regional development." For 2 hours, Mr. Maurice presented elaborate proposals involving luxury inns, rural condominiums, and convention centers. The numbers were impressive, but Rachel noticed that the focus was on profitability, not community development. "These are interesting projects," she said diplomatically, "but my focus is on smaller initiatives, more integrated with the existing community." "Rachel," Jennifer interrupted, "you need to think big. With the money these projects would generate, you could help many more people than with your amateur donations. But the process would be different. The community would lose control over its own development. "What control?" Jennifer retorted. "Most of these people don't have enough formal education to make complex decisions about regional development. You need qualified professionals." The discussion intensified. Jennifer argued about wasted economic potential, while Rachel defended the importance of maintaining the community character of the projects. Mr. Maurice tried to mediate by offering a partnership where Rachel would retain some control over decisions, but she realized it was a maneuver to convince her to accept the investment. "I need time to think," she finally said. "We don't have much time," replied Mr. Maurice. "Opportunities like this are rare. If you let it pass, you might regret it later." After the visitors left, Rachel felt pressured and confused. The proposals were financially tempting, but something inside her resisted the idea of turning her grandfather's legacy into a conventional business. She decided to talk to Helen about the dilemma. "Rachel, you need to trust your instincts," said the agronomist. "I know many cases of projects that started with good intentions, but were distorted by commercial interests. Once you give up control, you lose the ability to ensure that the benefits truly reach the community." "But what if Jennifer is right? What if I'm being naive and missing a real opportunity to help more people?" There's a difference between helping more people and helping better. Sometimes it's preferable to deeply impact a few lives than to superficially impact many lives. The conversation with Helen reassured her, but didn't completely resolve her internal conflicts. During the weekend, Rachel decided to visit the other properties left by her grandfather to personally assess their conditions and potential. The first property was about 8 kilometers from the cabin, in a lower area of the mountains where there was a natural pond and a spring of clean water. The land was flat and fertile, ideal for family farming. The second property was located on an elevation with a panoramic view of the mountains. There was a small house in good condition and enough space for outdoor activities. The third property was near the rural municipal school and had a larger building that could be adapted for different uses. Each property had unique characteristics that confirmed her grandfather's strategic vision. He had chosen complementary locations that together offered diverse development possibilities. As she walked through the property with the reservoir, Rachel imagined families cultivating organic gardens, children learning about sustainable agriculture, and young people developing production cooperatives. On the property with the panoramic view, she envisioned craft workshops, training courses, and community gatherings with the mountains as an inspiring backdrop. On the property near the school, she saw spaces for supplementary education, a community library, and a digital inclusion center. Her visions were different from the proposals presented by Mr. Maurice. Where he saw commercial potential, she saw possibilities for social transformation. When she returned to the cabin in the late afternoon, Rachel had made her decision. She would follow her instincts and develop the community projects as originally planned. However, she knew she would have to face her family's opposition. The following Monday, Jennifer called demanding an answer about the investors' proposals. "Rachel, Mr. Maurice needs a decision by Wednesday. Are you going to accept the partnership or not?" "I'm not accepting, Jennifer. I've decided to continue with the community projects." "You're making a terrible mistake. You're throwing away a unique opportunity out of pure sentimentality." "It's not sentimentality. It's a matter of values and priorities." "Values don't pay bills, Rachel, and they don't develop regions. You're being irresponsible." The call ended with Jennifer slamming the phone. Rachel knew she had created a serious rift with her sister, but she felt at peace with her decision. In the following days, she intensified the planning of the community projects together with Helen. They developed schedules, budgets, and implementation strategies. The first project would be the creation of a rural training center on the property near the school. Helen knew qualified instructors in various areas: organic farming, beekeeping, small animal husbandry, and food processing. The second project would involve transforming the property with the reservoir into a cooperative family farming center. Interested families could cultivate individual plots and share resources like irrigation and equipment. The third project would be the creation of a craft and rural tourism space on the property with the panoramic view. Local artisans would have permanent workshops, and could sell products to visitors. The projects were ambitious but feasible. Helen estimated that the initial implementation would require an investment of approximately $100,000, an amount that was within their means considering the resources left by her grandfather and the eventual sale of some paintings. Rachel decided it was time to present the detailed plans to the community. She organized a second community meeting, this time with concrete proposals and specific timelines. The response was extremely positive. "This is exactly what our region needs," said Mrs. Dorothy. "My grandson can learn a trade without having to leave here. We'll finally have a place to sell our products without depending on middlemen," commented a local producer. "My daughters love crafts but never had the opportunity to learn better techniques," added a mother. The meeting ended with the formation of working committees for each project. Volunteers organized themselves to help with the planning, construction, and operation of the initiatives. Rachel felt deeply moved seeing the community's enthusiasm. For the first time since discovering her grandfather's legacy, she was absolutely certain she was on the right path. However, her determination would be tested by a series of unexpected challenges. The following week, she received a call from Attorney David, the lawyer responsible for the will. "Rachel, I need to inform you about a complicated legal development. Your family has filed a legal challenge to the will." "What do you mean?" "They're claiming your grandfather wasn't in full mental capacity when he made the will. They want to annul the inheritance and redistribute the assets among all descendants." Rachel felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Can they do that?" "They can try. I'll need to gather medical documents and witnesses who can prove your grandfather's mental sanity at the time of the will. It's a process that could take months." "And during this period, you can continue living in the cabin, but any use of the financial resources will be legally blocked." The news devastated Rachel. Without access to the resources left by her grandfather, she wouldn't be able to implement the community projects or continue the monthly donations. Worse still, the legal challenge meant the family was officially at war against her decisions. That night, she cried for the first time since she had moved to the cabin. She felt betrayed by the family and worried about the people who depended on her help. The next morning, Mrs. Evelyn appeared at the cabin with a worried face. "Rachel, I heard about the legal situation through acquaintances in town. What are you going to do?" "I don't know, Mrs. Evelyn. Without Grandpa's resources, I can't continue either the donations or the projects." "What if we found other ways of funding?" Rachel hadn't considered that possibility. "How?" "I know some organizations that support social projects. There's also the possibility of selling some of your grandfather's paintings to get your own resources." The idea of selling the paintings resurfaced as a viable alternative. If Charles Edward, the collector, was still interested, she could get enough resources to start the projects independently of the blocked funds. Rachel called the collector that same day. "Charles Edward, this is Rachel Bennett. Are you still interested in the W. Fletcher paintings?" "Of course. I was waiting for your call. I can come there today if you want. I'd like that. But I need to be clear. I'll only sell part of the works, not all." "No problem. We can select the pieces with the most commercial interest." Charles Edward arrived at the cabin that same afternoon and selected 8 paintings from the collection. He offered $90,000 for the chosen works, an amount that would allow Rachel to implement at least 2 of the 3 planned projects. "I accept your proposal," she said after a brief hesitation. "Perfect. I can arrange the bank transfer this week." With the funds from the sale of the paintings, Rachel regained her ability to act. She decided to speed up the implementation of the rural training project, which had lower initial costs and more immediate impact. Helen helped her contact instructors and suppliers. In 2 weeks, they managed to organize the first organic farming course on the property near the school. 12 participants enrolled, including young people who had finished high school and adults interested in diversifying their rural activities. The course was a success. The participants were extremely motivated and quickly absorbed the technical knowledge presented. "I never imagined you could produce so much in a small area," commented one of the participants. "Now I understand how I can improve the quality of my products and get better prices," said another. The success of the first course motivated Rachel to quickly organize a second class, this time focused on food processing and preservation. At the same time, she began preparing the property with the pond for the cooperative farming project. With the help of Richard, the mason, she started building a small headquarters and installing an irrigation system. The projects gained visibility in the region and began attracting positive attention from local authorities. The mayor of Boone visited the property and offered institutional support. "This is exactly what our region needs," said the mayor. "We'll find ways to officially support these projects." The positive impact of the projects reached Jennifer through mutual acquaintances. She called Rachel in a more conciliatory tone than in previous conversations. "Rachel, I heard you managed to implement some projects, even with the legal matter pending." "I did. I sold some of Grandfather's paintings to have my own funds. Look, maybe we can find a middle ground. I'm willing to withdraw the legal challenge if you accept my participation in managing the projects." Rachel was surprised by her sister's change in tone. "Participate how?" "I can bring business expertise to make the projects more financially sustainable. Having good intentions isn't enough. It needs professional management." "And would you set aside the real estate plans?" "If the community projects prove economically viable, yes. But I need guarantees that we won't waste resources due to amateurism." Jennifer's proposal was tempting. Ending the legal dispute would allow access to the full resources left by their grandfather, making all planned projects feasible. On the other hand, Rachel feared her sister might gradually try to turn the community initiatives into conventional businesses. "I need to think about this," she replied. "Don't take too long. The legal matter is costing money for the whole family." Rachel decided to talk to Helen about Jennifer's proposal. "It's complicated," said the agronomist. "On one hand, you need the blocked resources. On the other, poorly structured partnerships can completely change the nature of the projects." "Do you think I should accept?" "I think you should establish very clear conditions. If Jennifer really wants to participate, she needs to accept that the focus is social, not commercial. And you need to maintain final control over decisions." Helen's advice made sense. Rachel decided to propose a family meeting to negotiate the terms of a possible partnership. The meeting took place the following weekend at their parents' house. For the first time in months, the whole family was together without explicit tension. Rachel presented in detail the implemented projects and the results achieved so far. She showed photos of the courses, participant testimonials, and expansion plans. "I'm impressed," Jennifer admitted. "Jennifer, I didn't imagine you could organize something so structured in such a short time." "So you agree to withdraw the legal challenge?" asked Rachel. "I agree, but with some conditions. I want to participate in the financial management and have a voice in strategic decisions. I also think we should professionalize the project administration." "What do you mean by professionalize?" "Hire an accountant, create monthly reports, establish quantifiable goals. Turn this into an operation that can grow sustainably." Rachel consulted with Helen and other community members before giving a final response. Everyone agreed that professionalizing management would be positive, as long as it didn't alter the community character of the projects. "I accept your participation," Rachel said during a call to Jennifer. "But I need you to understand that our goal is social impact, not maximum profit." "I understand. And you'll see that it's possible to have social impact and financial sustainability at the same time." With the end of the legal dispute, Rachel regained access to the full resources left by her grandfather. The bank account revealed a balance even larger than initially estimated, $320,000 accumulated over decades. Additionally, Attorney David informed them about one last surprise left by their grandfather, a life insurance policy whose beneficiary was specifically the social project to be created with the inheritance resources. "Your grandfather foresaw everything," said the attorney. "The policy guarantees an additional $150,000 allocated exclusively for community projects. With expanded resources and professional management through Jennifer's participation, the projects gained a new dimension. The Rural Training Center expanded to offer permanent courses in various fields. The cooperative agriculture attracted 20 participating families. The craft space began receiving visitors from neighboring towns. Most importantly, the project started generating real economic results for the participants. Families increased their income through improved farming techniques. Local artisans developed a market for their products. Young people found career alternatives without having to migrate to urban centers. The transformation of the local community caught the attention of regional and national organizations. A rural development institute offered technical partnership. A business foundation proposed co-financing for expansion. "I never imagined the region could transform so much in such a short time," commented Mrs. Dorothy. "My grandson is already planning to study agriculture in college, but now he knows he can return and have opportunities right here." The partnership with Jennifer, despite initial tensions, proved beneficial. She brought administrative organization and the ability to connect with investors and external partners. Rachel maintained control over decisions related to the social character of the projects. "I admit I was wrong about your plans," said Jennifer during a visit to the projects. "You managed to create something that has real impact and is still financially sustainable." "The secret was listening to the community from the start," replied Rachel. "The projects work because they meet people's real needs." 18 months after discovering her grandfather's legacy, Rachel saw her life completely transformed. The insecure teacher who felt like the black sheep of the family had become a respected community leader and a competent manager of social projects. The grandfather's cabin was renovated and became the administrative headquarters of the projects. The walls displayed photos of the activities carried out and frames with some of Grandfather Walter's original paintings. One Sunday morning, exactly 2 years after receiving the call from Attorney David about the inheritance, Rachel walked through the cabin grounds reflecting on everything that had happened. The place was unrecognizable. Where there was once just an abandoned property, there now existed a dynamic center of community activities. People came and went for courses, meetings, production, and marketing activities. But the most significant transformation had happened within Rachel herself. She discovered abilities she didn't know she possessed: leadership, management, political articulation, strategic vision. "Good morning, Rachel," greeted Richard, who had become maintenance coordinator for all properties. "Good morning, Richard. How are the preparations for the new workshop inauguration?" "All ready. Tomorrow the last sewing machines for the Cooperative Clothing Project arrive." The Cooperative Clothing Project was the newest initiative, developed in response to the demand from several women in the community who had sewing skills but couldn't find an adequate market for their products. "And the computer course?" asked Rachel. "It started last week with 20 enrolled. Everyone's loving it. There are 60-year-olds learning to use computers for the first time." Digital inclusion had become a priority when Rachel realized that many young people in the region didn't have adequate access to the internet and basic computer knowledge, limiting their educational and career opportunities. As she walked through the projects, Rachel remembered the first letter she had found in the cabin, written by Mrs. Dorothy, thanking her grandfather for saving her grandson's life. Now, 2 years later, that same grandson was graduating as an agricultural technician through one of the courses offered by the training center. He had become one of the most inspiring examples of how the projects could transform lives. "Rachel," called Helen, approaching with a group of visitors, "I want to introduce you to the team from the Federal University who came to see our projects." Technical visits had become frequent. Researchers, public managers, and social organizations came to study the model developed on Grandfather Walter's property. "It's impressive how you've managed to integrate economic and social development so harmoniously," commented one of the visiting professors. "The secret is in listening to the community and building together with them," replied Rachel, repeating what she had learned from Helen. After the researchers' visit, Rachel went to the small memorial she had created in the main room of the cabin, a table with photos of Grandfather Walter, some of his original paintings, and copies of the first thank you letters he received. Above the table, a plaque with a phrase that summarized the philosophy that had guided his entire journey: "True wealth lies in the difference we can make in the lives of others." "You would be proud," she murmured, looking at a photo of her grandfather. "Your legacy has multiplied far beyond what you imagined." At that moment, her phone rang. It was a call from Washington. "Rachel Bennett, this is the Department of Social Development. We would like to invite you to present your projects at a national conference on community rural development." The call represented official recognition of the work developed. The project, started in her grandfather's cabin, had become a national reference in participatory social development. "It would be an honor to participate," she replied. After hanging up, Rachel sat on the cabin's porch, watching the movement of people through the different spaces of the projects. She saw children playing while their mothers attended classes. She saw young people learning modern farming techniques. She saw elders sharing traditional knowledge with the new generations. The vision that Grandfather Walter had for that property had materialized even more broadly than he had imagined. The place had become a center of hope and opportunities for the entire region. Jennifer appeared on the porch, carrying a folder of documents. "Rachel, the funding proposals for expanding the projects to other regions have arrived." "Other regions?" "3 neighboring towns want to replicate our model. They are offering land and financial support for us to implement similar projects." The possibility of expansion was exciting, but also challenging. Rachel knew that growing while maintaining the quality and community character of the projects would require a lot of planning. "Let's study the proposals carefully," she said. "I don't want growth to compromise our principles." "I agree. We have to grow sustainably, always keeping the focus on the community." The maturity of the partnership between the sisters had surprised the whole family. They had found a balance between Jennifer's technical skills and Rachel's social sensitivity. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky with golden colors that reminded her of her grandfather's paintings, Rachel reflected on her journey. 3 years before, she was an insecure teacher who felt lost in life. Today, she was a recognized leader who had transformed not only her own existence, but the lives of hundreds of people. Grandfather Walter's legacy had proven to be much greater than a simple inheritance. It was an invitation to discover your own potential to make a difference in the world. "Rachel," called Mrs. Evelyn, approaching the porch, "I came to deliver the monthly report of the assisted families." The direct donations continued, now integrated with income generation projects. Families received emergency financial support while participating in training programs that would allow them to become financially independent. "How are the numbers this month?" asked Rachel. 23 families received direct support, but 12 of them are already participating in the training projects. In 6 months, half won't need external help anymore. This evolution from dependence to autonomy was exactly what Rachel had envisioned when she decided to expand the donation system to development projects. "Mrs. Evelyn, you've followed this whole process from the beginning. How do you assess what we've built?" The pharmacist smiled with emotion. "Dear, your grandfather dreamed of something like this, but even he didn't imagine it could grow so much. He planted a seed that you turned into a forest." That evening, Rachel dined in the cabin along with Helen, Richard, and other close collaborators of the projects. It was a tradition they had created, gathering weekly to evaluate results and plan next activities. "Everyone, I want to share a reflection," she said during dessert. "When I discovered my grandfather's secret, I thought my mission was simply to continue his donations. Today I realize he left much more than money. He left an example of how a person can dedicate their life to the good of others." "And you multiplied that example," replied Helen. "The projects we've created here will inspire other people in other regions. Your grandfather's legacy is spreading." "There's one thing that always intrigues me," said Richard. "How did your grandfather know you were the right person to continue his work?" Rachel had asked herself that question many times. "I think he didn't know for sure. He took a chance. He believed that if I discovered his secret, I would find a way to honor it." "And you found a way better than he himself imagined," added Helen. After dinner, when everyone said goodbye, Rachel was alone in the cabin for the first time in weeks. The silence of the night brought a feeling of deep peace that she had learned to value. She walked through the rooms of the cabin, observing the changes that had taken place. The main room kept some of the original features, but now served as a meeting and planning space. Her grandfather's old studio had become a community library. The room where she found the chest with the documents was now an office where she managed all activities. In every environment, there was evidence of the continuity between her grandfather's work and the current projects. The remaining paintings on the walls, the preserved antique furniture, the folders organized with historical records of the donations. Rachel picked up her grandfather's original notebook and read some of his notes. On a page dated 1992, he had written, "Sometimes I wonder if this work really makes a difference. There are so many needs, and my ability to help is limited. But today I received a letter from the Williams family saying that their son managed to graduate thanks to the money I sent for his studies. I realized I don't need to solve all the world's problems. It's enough to do my part and trust that others will do theirs." Her grandfather's reflection perfectly summarized what Rachel had learned during her journey. It wasn't necessary to save the whole world. It was enough to do her part with dedication and competence. She opened her own notebook and wrote, 3 years after discovering Grandfather Walter's legacy, I understand that the most important inheritance he left me wasn't money or properties. It was the example of how to live with purpose. Today I know who I am and why I'm here. I am someone who can make a difference in the lives of others, and that is the only wealth that truly matters. When she closed the notebook and prepared to sleep, Rachel looked through her bedroom window at the lights scattered across the project properties. She saw illumination at the Agricultural Cooperative headquarters, where some participants were working on processing products for delivery the next day. She saw lights in the crafts workshop, where a group of women was finishing a special order. Each light represented a life that had found new possibilities through the projects. Each person working represented someone who had discovered ways to improve their own condition and that of their family. Grandfather Walter had planted a seed of hope that had transformed into a flourishing community of opportunities. And Rachel had discovered that her true calling wasn't teaching children in a classroom, but rather teaching entire communities to discover and develop their own potential. The next morning she woke to the sound of excited voices chatting in the cabin gardens. It was Monday, the start day for a new beekeeping course group. Rachel dressed quickly and went out to greet the new participants. Among them she recognized young people who had grown up in the region, family parents looking to diversify their income, and even retirees interested in learning a productive activity. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rural Training Center," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "Good morning, Professor Rachel," the participants responded in chorus. The address of professor had remained, but now with a much broader meaning than when she taught in a traditional classroom. She had become a professor of possibilities, teaching people to discover paths to transform their own lives. During the morning, she monitored the start of the beekeeping course and visited the other ongoing activities in the projects. Every space was operating fully, with qualified instructors and engaged participants. In the early afternoon, she received an unexpected call that brought a new dimension to her projects. "Rachel, this is the National Broadcasting Network. We're preparing a story about innovative social projects in rural North Carolina. We heard about the work being developed there in the region and would like to include you in the piece." The possibility of national exposure was exciting, but also concerning. Rachel knew that excessive visibility could attract unwanted attention and compromise the community character of the projects. "May I discuss with my team and get back to you tomorrow?" she asked. "Of course, I'll leave my contact and await your response." During the afternoon planning meeting, Rachel discussed the reporting proposal with Helen, Jennifer, and other collaborators. "I think we should accept," Jennifer opined. "National visibility could attract new partners and funders. But it could also bring problems," Helen pondered. "I've seen community projects that lost their original character after receiving too much media attention." "What if we accept with conditions?" suggested Rachel. "We can make clear that the focus should be on results for the community, not on individual personalities." After discussion, they decided to accept the story, but establishing clear guidelines about how the projects should be presented. The National Broadcasting Network team arrived the following week and spent 2 days documenting the activities. The reporter interviewed project participants, instructors, community leaders, and managers. "It's impressive how you've managed to create a replicable model of social development," commented the reporter during a break in filming. "The most important thing is that the model was born from the community itself," Rachel responded. "Our role was to create conditions for people to develop their own potential." The report aired 3 weeks later, during prime time on the national evening news. Rachel watched at home along with Helen, Richard, and other team members. Seeing the projects presented nationally was moving. The piece showed touching testimonials from participants who had transformed their lives through the activities offered. "My whole family changed after I started taking part in the projects here," said one of the interviewees. "My husband learned modern agricultural techniques. I developed a small homemade sweets business, and my children have access to quality supplementary education." The impact of the report was immediate. In the following 48 hours, Rachel received over 100 calls from people interested in learning about the projects or replicating the model in other regions. "Is this good or bad?" she asked Helen, looking at the list of accumulated messages. "It could be very good if we manage it properly," replied the agronomist. "The important thing is to maintain our principles regardless of outside pressure." One of the calls particularly caught Rachel's attention. It was from a businessman from New York who had made a fortune in technology and decided to dedicate part of his life to social projects. "Rachel, this is Paul Robert Anderson. I saw the report about your projects and was impressed. I'd like to personally see the work you're doing." "You're most welcome, Mr. Paul. When would you like to come?" "If possible, I'd like to spend a whole week there learning all the details. I'm considering starting a foundation and believe you could be strategic partners." The businessman's visit took place a month later. Paul Robert arrived with a small team of advisors and spent 7 days observing all the project activities. "Rachel, you've created something unique," he said on the last day of his visit. "I want to propose a partnership that could turn these projects into a national model for community development. The proposal involved significant funding to expand the projects, create a replicable methodology, and implement it in other regions of the country. The numbers are impressive," said Paul Robert, presenting a detailed spreadsheet. "I can invest $5 million in the first year to expand the model to at least 10 municipalities." Rachel was impressed by the magnitude of the proposal, but also cautious. "Mr. Paul, your resources are most welcome, but we need to ensure that expansion doesn't compromise our fundamental principles." "Of course, that's why I want you to maintain full control over the methodology and implementation. My role would only be to provide financial resources and logistical support." The proposal was tempting, but Rachel asked for time to discuss it with her team. An expansion of this magnitude would completely change the scale of the projects. During the following weeks, she carefully evaluated the pros and cons of the proposed partnership. She spoke with social development experts, consulted community leaders, and studied similar cases. "The main risk is losing control over the quality of the projects," warned Helen. "Too rapid growth could compromise the community essence that sets us apart." "On the other hand," argued Jennifer, "we could help many more people if we have adequate resources for responsible expansion." After deep reflection, Rachel made a decision that surprised everyone around her. "I'll accept the partnership, but with very specific conditions," she announced during a meeting with Paul Robert. "What conditions?" "First, the expansion will be gradual. We'll start with 2 municipalities in the first year and only expand to the other 8 if the initial projects maintain our quality standards. Second, every new project must have at least 6 months of community preparation before being implemented. Third, I maintain final veto power over any decision I consider contrary to our principles." Paul Robert listened to all the conditions and smiled. "I fully accept. It's precisely this seriousness and these principles that convinced me to invest in you." The formalization of the partnership brought a new phase to the projects. Rachel found herself taking on nationwide responsibilities, guiding implementations in other states, and participating in conferences on social development. However, she made sure to spend at least 3 days a week in the original cabin, maintaining direct contact with the community that had started it all. "I can never forget where I came from and why I began this work," she said during an interview with a magazine specializing in the non-profit sector. 2 years after the partnership with Paul Robert, the projects had expanded to 15 municipalities in 7 states. More than 3,000 families were directly participating in the activities, and another 10,000 had been indirectly benefited. The methodology developed became a national and international reference, Delegations from other countries came to study the American model of participatory community development. "Rachel, you've become one of the main references in social development in the United States," commented Jennifer during a visit to the cabin. "Who would have thought our black sheep would turn into a national leader?" "I didn't turn into anything I wasn't already," replied Rachel. "I just discovered who I really was and found a way to express it." One Sunday afternoon, 5 years after discovering her grandfather's secret, Rachel walked alone through the grounds of the original projects. The place was unrecognizable compared to the abandoned cabin she had found years before. Now there was a complex and organized infrastructure, buildings for courses and training, warehouses for production and processing, agricultural demonstration areas, community library, computer center, craft workshops, administrative headquarters. But the most impressive thing was seeing the constant movement of people, entire families participating in activities, young people learning technical trades, adults developing their own businesses, elderly people sharing experiences with the new generations. The vision of Grandfather Walter had materialized even more broadly than he could have imagined. Rachel stopped in front of the memorial she kept in the main room of the original cabin, the photos of her grandfather, his paintings, the first letters of gratitude received. "Thank you, Grandpa," she murmured. "You taught me that the true inheritance isn't material possessions, but values and purposes that can transform generations." At that moment, her phone rang. It was an international call. "Rachel, this is the World Bank. We're organizing a seminar on sustainable rural development in Washington. We'd like to invite you as one of the keynote speakers." The call represented international recognition of the work developed. The model created in the small cabin of Boone had gained worldwide projection. "It will be an honor to participate," she replied. After hanging up, Rachel returned to contemplating the movement of people through the projects. She saw children playing while their parents worked. She saw young people dreaming of possible futures. She saw entire families building better lives. Each person present represented a victory over resignation and conformity. Each functioning project represented proof that real social transformation is possible when working with people instead of for people. Grandfather Walter had left much more than a material inheritance. He had left an example of how a life can be dedicated to the common good without sacrificing personal fulfillment. And Rachel had turned that example into a replicable methodology that benefited thousands of people across the United States and began inspiring similar projects in other countries. As the sun set on that Sunday afternoon, painting the mountains with golden hues reminiscent of her grandfather's paintings, Rachel felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had found her place in the world. She had discovered her true calling. She had magnificently honored the family legacy. And she knew her story was just the beginning of something even greater that would spread through future generations, infinitely multiplying the impact of the quiet kindness of a simple man who dedicated his life to helping others. The old cabin of her grandfather had become the center of a quiet revolution of hope and possibilities. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. If you have any similar experiences with family legacies or community projects, share them in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Rachel made the right decisions throughout her journey? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.